A very good morning, everyone. Ansuya, I guess we can start.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to one and all. I, Anasuya Nair, am delighted to welcome you to this August event held in the honor of Science Day. We have a wonderful series of events and talks lined up ahead of us, and so without any further ado, I'd like to request the head of the Department of Life Sciences, Dr. Sri Nair, to acquaint us with the premise of Science Day.
A very good morning to everyone. So today, 28th February, we are celebrating as National Science Day. So this Science Day or 28th February has a relevance because on this day in 1928, Sir C.V. Raman discovered Raman effect. And after 2 years in 1930, he got a Nobel Prize, which was for the first for the country in the field of science. So National Science Day is celebrated on 20th February to commemorate this event. In 1986, in fact, NCSTC asked the government of India to designate 20th Feb as National Science Day, which got accepted. Hence, on 1987, the first National Science Day was celebrated. So the purpose of the celebrations are manifold. The basic objective is to popularize science, to widely spread the significance of scientific applications in daily life of people, to discuss issues and implement new technologies for the development of science, to popularize science and bring together the scientific-minded citizens in the country, and also to encourage students as well as whoever has a scientific spark in their mind. So with this, I request Ansuya to start the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now that we are all familiar with Science Day, I request my colleague, Nilofer Khatri, to introduce Dr. Golden Quadros, a member of the Sophia College family, having taught in our very own Department of Zoology.
Thank you, Anusuya. A very good morning, everyone. I am Nilofer. Today, it is indeed a privilege and honor for me to welcome our speaker for the day. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Golden Quadros. Dr. Golden Quadros is the principal scientist and head at Wetland Ecology Division and also the Environment Information System Coordinator at Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Quadros has been working with Salim Ali Center as a senior scientist since 2011. Sir completed his graduation, post-graduation, and PhD from Mumbai University. He is presently involved with 5 research projects and have completed 11 researches, apart from his PhD and master's dissertations. Sir is actively involved in supervising several research projects. Dr. Golden's area of specialization lies in benthic fauna from the intertidal regions of estuaries, coasts, and creeks. Sir has published more than 20 articles in various nationally as well as internationally recognized journals. Prior to joining Salim Ali Center, Sir worked with several institutions, including the publicly acclaimed WWF India, where he worked as a senior education officer and officiating state director. Sir has received formal training and education for sustainable development from Uppsala University, Sweden. He has also been a delegation leader for India at the Seeds of Peace International Camp for Coexistence and Communications Training at Ottersfield, USA. Not only is he an impeccable scientist, but is also a great author with 8 titles published on the topics of biodiversity and ecosystems. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our esteemed speaker for the day, Dr. Golden Quadros. We welcome you, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to this important day that is being observed all across the country. And it is indeed my pleasure to be addressing on this occasion. And it's like coming back home. I would have loved to be there in Sophia College again and spoken with you directly. But anyway, the virtual media is the new normal. And without wasting much time, I will start on my topic that I have decided for today, and that is basically understanding wetlands. Is my screen visible to all? Is the slideshow visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so the topic that I have decided today is understanding wetlands. And when we talk about sustainability, wetlands are something that are much disregarded and totally destroyed, despite the fact that we all know that it is a major feature of a landscape, and it's found in almost all parts of the world. You find them in Bombay, you find them, you go out of Mumbai, you find them everywhere. And it is one ecosystem around which the civilizations have grown, have developed, and all. Like there were these civilizations called as European civilization and the Asian civilization. The European civilization was also called as the hydraulic civilization because they received water seasonally. It was not very abundant. So based on that, they learned how to take care of water and control their usage and how they could manage the water. Whereas the Asian civilization is known to be the aquatic civilization. Why? Because they had abundance of water, and somehow did not value water as much as they should have. And somehow, gradually over time, they also learned how the Europeans would do control the water and manage the civilization over there. And gradually led to the destruction of a lot of water bodies over a period of time. And this was not just, destruction was not just a beginning sort of thing. If you all go down into history, you all will find that, there are a lot of mummified bodies that were found during the 1950s and 60s and 70s, like that. The oldest being the Yedi girl in 1897, which was buried in 1897 and discovered in the 70s, 80s. These bodies are basically, they were sacrificed in the wetland because it was thought that these people would either do some black magic, or it was like they were sacrificed so that their fertility of the land would grow, or some filthy reason that was associated with it, and they would be sacrificed and put in the wetland. And how would these bodies get mummified? It was that nobody would mummify it. There was excess of tannin that was present in these bodies, that is the wetlands, which were basically also considered as bogs. And so these would enter into the bodies naturally and mummify it and keep it for a longer duration. And so as time passed by, people felt like these bodies are there and it is something evil. So all the more same for the wetlands. Something that is found, dead body is found somewhere, and then it is all associated with the superstition and are all outdated beliefs and all that stuff. That was again supported by different movies and cartoons that came from the Hollywood and other film industry, like The Creature from the Black Lagoon, Revenge of the Creature Walks Among Us, and n number of films that never promoted a good picture of wetlands. It was like, the wetland has an evil spirit. And if you go there, though, something will come out of water and manage to kill you and drag you out and all that stuff. Even the children were, not shown a good picture of wetland. A lot of cartoon characters that were depicting bad about the wetlands. Why old days? The most recent one I could tell was a 2011 film, Megapython and Gatroid versus Gatroid. Here it is a real sad thing that in today's age and time, the conservationists, the environmentalists are shown in bad light, and it is like considered okay to destroy wetlands, and such things went on. And if one goes to see, even in literature, the wetlands are not treated well. There are several literature that compare wetlands to hell. Even this one, our Carl Linnaeus has very badly written about reading swampy water bodies where it was difficult, and he has compared it to something that is real bad, not livable, and all that stuff, which is really astonishing for a person who is associated with nature and environment to give a bad image to a water body. a wetland. And even in literature, if you go to see when we use our sentences, there are many times we say, I'm bogged down by details, I'm swamped by work, and so on and so forth. And if we go to see, then, if we look at the definitions as to, what are wetlands, wetlands are basically, they have several terms. They were called as bogs, fen, kar, moor, moor, etc., etc. And they were easy to divide between the terrestrial and the aquatic habitats. It was just a fuzzy line between the two. And when the thing called development creeped in, it was like, it was considered something like, flooded forest or flooded meadows, and these are something like liquid assets, waterlogged wealth. If you know about the atlas that we have, we also have one atlas called as the Wasteland Atlas of the country of India. And in that, if you check out, there are several water bodies which are considered as wastelands, and they are good enough to be, reclaimed and developed. So it's like, something that has not changed over time, though the understanding has increased, but there is still some certain things that are lagging. It's just that, wetlands can be treated in a bad way. It can be reclaimed. Even Bombay, for that matter, was a group of 7 islands which was reclaimed, and now we have one huge island. And there are still a lot of water bodies on this landmass of Mumbai, but we are losing them. So, it is like waterlogged wealth that is being exploited, not looking into the fact that, it provides us a lot of biodiversity, and it's just being lost. So if you go to see, over a period of time, these wetlands or these water bodies with several terms like fern, kar, palaya, so, sar, and all, etc., etc., estuaries, lagoons, were renamed as wetlands. Sorry, excuse me. If we go into the earliest definition for wetlands, wetland was used as an euphemistic substitute for the term swamp by Wright in 1907. So this is the first term that was used, first term that was given to a water body or wetland, where it helped some policymakers, some decision makers in considering wetlands in a favorable way. So there it started like, a small revolution where, the water body got some prominence, some importance, some identity. So since 1907, it was like, gradual growth that happened. And the term wetland was broadly used much more since 1950s. This was because naturalists or, the people who would hunt for birds found that the waterfowl was just going away. So what do we do? That is how, these definitions started creeping in, cropping up. And, the new terms were used to protect certain habitats where waterfowl would be available for, say, hunting or for protection. Gradually, it was in 1956 where the US Fish and Wildlife Service first defined wetlands as the 20 different types of wetlands. So it was like, classification of wetlands that started first time. Sorry. So earlier it was, we never thought that, wetlands can be classified. Like you have plant classification, you have animal classification. Very true. You also have the water body classification, and the basic one is comprises of 20 different types. Over the years, definitions also grew up, and gradually it is like 50 different terms were taken into consideration, which we still use. And these 50 terms are further, have further grown up, and there are something like around 200 different terms that are there. But we gradually, or rather, basically stick to the 2050 classification system, which is easy to understand and protect these water bodies. So to just go through a few definitions, the ecological definition is one which is used by scientists all over in a passing manner, where it is considered as ecotone or transitional zone between permanently aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. Covardin was the one who helped understand the wetland definition in a much more clear way. It was like, you should have basically okay, you should have at least one of these 3 attributes to be the water body to be classified as wetland. That is, at least periodically the land supports hydrophytes. The substrate is predominantly undrained hydric soil, so that there is good amount of minerals that are there in the soil, and it has a good amount of water holding capacity, and it is wet enough even when the water has dried off, has drained off. And the substrate is non-soil and is saturated with water or covered by water for some period of the growing season. So some period could mean 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, when the plants are growing and all that stuff. So that is the basic classification or the definition by Cowardin that was used even by Ramsar, because the definition that he clarified much better in a much better way was in 1979. But the Ramsar definition that came was in 1971, also as per the US Fish and Marine Services. In Article 1.1, they included all kinds of, say, static, flowing, brackish, salt, marine water, where the depth during low tide does not exceed 6 meters as a wetland. And subsequently, it was again reframed in the Article 1.2 in 1991, where they used exactly what Cowardin had said. And the same definition is also used in wetland rules for the country, which were framed first in 2010 and subsequently in 2017. They were amended. But in 2010 and 2017, the difference is that, in 2017, we left out the river channels, paddy fields, and the coastal wetlands, and some of the coastal wetlands that were covered by the MOEF notification of February 1991. So the reasons are there. I will tell you all what the reasons were, but then these were left out of the wetland rules definition. The most recent one, if you go to see, was by Pitcock. Definition for wetlands was by Pitcock in 2015, where if you concentrate on this part, it says it all. Like, the definition is all. Like, it is water is a primary controlling factor, and animal life and the wider environment, where the water table is at or near the surface of the land, and where water covers the land. Here, the water is covering the land, and here it is very close to the land. So, he summarized it in a much easier way for people to understand. But if we want to understand what are wetlands, the definition lies in the word itself. Wet land is wetland. So how much wet is it? Surface to what depth? Pardon? Hello?
I guess aberrantly किसी का unmute हो गया. I'm sorry.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So flooding, what is the depth of the flooding that is there, and how long is the water body wet, or a landscape wet, whether it is for a couple of hours, days, weeks, month, or the whole year. So this was described by one of the Indian scientists, late Professor Brij Gopal, which gives a better understanding of the wetland. So with this thing, if we classify the wetlands, broadly, I told that there are 20 different types of wetlands, and in that the primary thing is 5 different types of wetlands. That is marine ecosystem, estuarine ecosystem, the riverine, lacustrine, and the polystrine wetlands. So if we look at the marine ecosystem, like you go to the seashore and you have the tides coming, during high tide, the water will come up towards the shore, and the low tide, the water will recede. So as the water recedes during the low tide, the maximum, say, distance to which the water recedes, and the depth to where it is 6 meters is considered as a wetland. So, it's a huge continental shelf region that becomes the wetland. So if we go to the coast, otherwise people feel that this is just the ocean, this is a seashore. No, that place also has the wetlands, and that is how the coral reefs also come under the wetland category. So all these is classified based on the definition of the wetlands. And then the estuarine ecosystem is also much similar to the marine ecosystem, because here also you have the tidal influence. You get both the high tide as well as the low tide, and during the low tide, as the water recedes, the depth up to which it is 6 meters deep is called as the wetland region. Whereas in riverine ecosystem, there are very insignificant tidal influence. You can get something like some sieges, that is the movement of water because of the moon rather than the sun. So here the fluctuation of water is there, but then that does not influence the definition of forming the say wetland region. Here what is important is during the dry season, say during the summer season, the volume of water reduces maximum in all river bodies. So during that time, the depth of the water up to 2.5 meters, the entire region is called as the wetland region, because from here to here, like, if you can see my cursor that I'm pointing out, is all the wetland region, because this is during the low water phase, that is during the summer time, when the water depth reaches maximum up to 2.5 meter depth. And the central part is called as the deep water habitat. So in riverine ecosystem, there are two types of ecosystem. There is a wetland ecosystem and the deep water habitat or deep water ecosystem. So that is the reason why the river channels, the central river channels, were excluded from the definition of say India's wetland rules that were formed. So this also holds true for the lacustrine ecosystem. Here also during summer season, as the water totally recedes, here the depth up to 2.5 meter region is considered as the wetland region, and the central part is the deep water ecosystem. So lakes, rivers have got two types of ecosystem. That is, along the banks it is a wetland, and the central part, which is deeper, where the ecology changes, where the light penetration changes, it is the deep water ecosystem. And then in the polystyrene ecosystem, these are small pools. They may not be huge lakes, but we have got small pools, something like if you have gone to Sion Lake or if you have gone to Banganga, these are small pools. If they dry up completely, the depth from the surface of the soil to the depth of 2.5 meters, if there is water percolation, that is there, there's moisture, then this part is still called as the wetland. And then in the definition, it was also said that, the growing season. So what is the growing season? Say during the monsoon time, 4 months of the year, if there is water retained in this part, then definitely, in this shallow like ecosystem, shallow surface like ecosystem, this part is called as the wetland. So if you have to compare a deep water ecosystem and a shallow water ecosystem, I would give you an example of cup and saucer. A saucer is something that is shallow. Everybody drinks tea, yeah. So when you want to make tea cold, you would pour tea in the saucer. So definitely it occupies larger space. It is shallower, and that is basically the wetland. That wetland is shallower, whereas a cup is deeper, and the temperature in the deeper cup or other depth that is there is more. So the temperature changes. This is just an example. So you can take the example of a cup and saucer, which will help you identify what is a deep water ecosystem and a shallow water ecosystem, or the wetland. So, and another thing that I'm sure you would have got confused is there is for the marine ecosystem, I've said 6 meter depth, whereas for the freshwater ecosystem, I'm saying only 2.5 meter depth. The difference is basically one thing is light penetration, second thing is the turbidity and the pH. These three factors, govern the characteristic of the characteristics that are used to differentiate between the marine ecosystem and the freshwater ecosystem. So the riverine, lacustrine, and polystyrene ecosystem, a 2.5 meter depth is taken into consideration, whereas for the estuarine and the marine ecosystem, it is 6 meter ecosystem. I wanted to stress on this because if you do not understand this classification, you cannot understand wetlands. And why do we conserve wetlands? Looking at the productivity in terms of hydrology, biogeochemical role, and productivity, wetland is something that is permanently flooded, or it has a moisture. It is a source, sink, or transformer for biogeochemical cycle, and it is generally that the productivity is high, but sometimes it is low. So these are the characteristics. Whereas in deep water ecosystem, it would be permanently flooded. It is a sink only. It is not a source or a transformer, and the this productivity is generally low. Whereas in the terrestrial ecosystem, it is a dry ecosystem. It is a source for biochemical cycles, and the productivity is low to medium. So this differentiates the three ecosystems. Now, coming to the facts of wetlands, maximum, or the remaining world's wetlands have been destroyed in the 20th century. The coastal wetlands are known to provide something like 12% of the total fish catch, and if one goes to see, it is like nearly 1.1 billion people do not have access to safe fresh water, and nearly 1.7 billion people live in water scarce regions. And if one checks at the, looks at the ecosystem services that the wetlands provide, it is entirely free of charge, and it is worth trillions of US dollars. Despite the fact that, we have certain facts like, 17% of wetland birds, 38% of freshwater dependent mammals, fish, and other reptiles and marine turtles and coral reef building species are all dependent on wetlands, but we end up destroying them, not giving them much importance. If one looks at the total area that India has in terms of wetlands, it is like 10.56 million hectares comprise of the inland wetlands, and the coastal wetlands comprise of something like 4.14 million. And this is as per the Space Application Center's reports of 2011. The aquatic plant diversity exceeds 1,200 species. And if one looks at the birds, it is like 275 species of birds are something like regular wetland birds, of which 187 are completely, totally dependent on the water. So they are the wetland birds, and 88 species are just wetland dependent species that, they need water for some time of their life cycle, or some time of the day, but they don't need to go and rest in water and all that stuff. But then these 187 species cannot do without water. As per SACON's Atlas of 2004, we had done a study where we found that 38% of the wetlands of India were lost during 1990s. And this despite the fact that, there was a lot of information regarding wetlands. India is a signatory to the Ramsar Convention, where importance of wetlands is there. And we were among the first ones to be the signatories to the Ramsar Convention. But still in the 1990s, we lost out 38% of the wetlands. And if one talks about the wetlands, 25 to 30% of India's aquatic flora comes from wetlands. 40 to 45% of the vertebrate fauna are dependent on wetlands for some or the other stage of their life cycle. And if this does not get completed, say something like, take for example, amphibians, they may just not be able to complete their life cycle if water is not available. Sorry. So these are certain important things, and definitely, the ecosystem services that one goes to see, wetlands have provisioning services, regulating services, cultural as well as supporting services. In provisioning, there is food, like, rice is something that is very important. If I have to talk about India, and one place which has lost large number of its rice varieties in recent times, I would talk about Nagaland. Nagaland is a hilly state, receives good amount of rainfall also, but there was a time where there was something like 2,000 species rice varieties that were documented over there, and now if you go to see, it has just around 800. And rice is not something that can grow without water totally. It needs water. So it is like, something is going amiss. So this certain things that we are disregarding wetlands, and just talking about development does not help. We have to look at the things like the genetic materials that are present, the ability of wetlands to control a lot of, say, pathogens and other things, have to be taken into consideration. Climate change is something, in the regulating service, it is the best regulator. I will come to a slide later on where I will talk about, how important wetlands are in controlling climate. Then the cultural thing, there are several things associated with wetlands where, if you look globally, all our temples have to be somewhere around the water body. Look at Banganga. If you go to see Banganga, there's a mud, there's a temple, there's so many things around a water body. You go to Himachal Pradesh, you'll find everywhere there is some water body flowing, and or a permanent water body, and there's a temple. Any kind of religious institution, water is very important. It is a source of education. It is something that is aesthetic. If you are feeling too tired, you go towards the water body, you feel quite relaxed. You go towards the seashore, you feel, looking at the waves, it gives you the pleasing sensation. So supporting services, The wetlands help in retention of sediment, accumulation of organic matter. This is again associated, if one takes the example of mangroves, they are known as the walking land builders because of the this roots that they possess and the nutrient cycling and all that. So, but despite knowing all this, we just managed to destroy, and we have still kept water bodies, wetlands in the national atlas of wastelands for the country, which is a really disappointing thing. That we need to work towards removing water bodies out of the wasteland atlas of the country so that they are protected for and conserved. Sorry. If one looks at the types of wetlands that we have, they can be classified into 4 groups: the Himalayan wetlands, the Indo-Gangetic plains, coastal wetlands, and the Deccan Plateau. All are characteristic, all have got their individuality in the different ecosystems. Like if I have to talk about the Deccan Plateau wetlands, they are mostly man-made wetlands historically by our kings, to conserve water, so that the water is not wasted. They would manage the water in such a way that it would provide for several things for the ecosystem services throughout the year, but somehow we are just losing out. Now, the wetlands that constitute in the country is something like 18.4% of the total area, with 70% under paddy cultivation. But we have removed the paddy fields from the wetland definition, and they do not contribute to the wetland thing. Why? I'll tell you all later. And the major concerns for the country are basically the changes in the land use land cover pattern, the rapid urbanization, the development projects that we have, the improper use of watersheds, and all this despite the fact that India is the signatory to the Ramsar Convention. If I have to talk about the Ramsar Convention as to how it came into existence, it was signed. This Ramsar Convention came into existence in 1971, but it was not just overnight thing that happened, that in 1971 several countries came together and signed a treaty saying that we will protect water. No, it was in 1960s. Like I said, the naturalist the naturalist or the shooters, the game hunters found that there were no birds. So they said that let's work or do something that the birds can be protected. So as they were having discussions, deliberations, meetings on protecting the waterfowl or the bird species, they found that we cannot protect birds, we cannot conserve birds, we cannot have the birds for a longer duration unless we protect their habitat. And what was their main habitat? That was the wetlands. And that is how gradually over a period of time it came into being that in Ramsar, a city in Iran, people came together and decided that we have to protect wetlands so that it can conserve a lot of biodiversity, not just birds, and it can provide for human beings. So there is a sustainability factor attached to it. There is a livelihood factor attached to it. And that's how we can grow. Now, India has something like 49 Ramsar sites. I'm sorry, I have not corrected this. This is not 47. India has 49 Ramsar sites. Recently, in January, we had 2 more added. And India was among the first countries to sign under the leadership of late Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who was a very good environmentalist and a very good green leader who did a lot of things for the welfare of the environment. And somehow to date, now we have something like 49 Ramsar sites, and very soon these numbers will increase. And India is among the leading Ramsar leading countries to have maximum number of Ramsar sites in the Southeast Asian countries, among the Southeast Asian countries. And we have something like 180 other species conservation important sites. That these are basically wetlands all across the country. Now, what do these wetlands have? They have several microorganisms. They have several kinds of phytoplankton which form the food chain. There are zooplankton which feed on phytoplankton. There are several gastropods that also feed on phytoplankton as well as zooplankton if it is sedentary, not floating in the water. So, at the same time, these gastropods also help in carbon sequestration, trap a lot of carbon and deposit it down into the ground. There are these nematodes, polychaetes, and other several invertebrate species which are also found in the wetlands, where they regulate a lot of pollutants They help control the small niches and create niches for several fish species. There are insects that depend on the wetlands. There are these crabs, crustaceans. This one is the hermit crab. This is the yucca species. Now, they're all found in different kinds of ecosystems. And if you are a keen observer, I'll just tell about this fiddler crab. It's not just fiddler crab, but then all crab species have a way to communicate with each other. Here in this fiddler crab, the male species has a longer chile. That is one first leg, if you say, is longer compared to the second one. So here the female would have equal sizes both, and the male would have one longer chile. After they have, how they would communicate if there is competition among two crabs for food, they will rotate their chile in a particular way. It could be either clockwise or anti-clockwise. If there is abundant food, if it is mating season, they will communicate to the female in a particular way, and that's how they would communicate and keep competition and food and all available. In case of hermit crab, they usually get the gastropods not from the say wetland region or coastal shallow region. They will go deeper into the ocean and bring dead shells up and then occupy them. And what they would also do is their body keeps on growing. Their body is soft at the abdomen region and all, so they have to protect that. And that is the reason why they need these dead empty shells to go and stay in them. So if there are two hermit crabs, they come together, they will fight for the bigger shell, so that when they grow, they don't have to search for a bigger shell, so that their body can get accommodated. But despite their fight, they're still called as hermit crabs, because they can live in these abandoned or dead gastropod shells. Then there are these holothurians and starfishes that you find along the coastal area. Several of the holothurians are also, or several species are under what is that, Wildlife Protection Act, and it is necessary to protect them. Yeah. Then there are mud skippers that you find, neofauna that is there, and then there is this association between man and birds and fish, that you get food from the wetlands. There are birds that are dependent on the wetlands for their food. As I've said, that something like 187 are completely wetland dependent birds. And India is part of the migratory pathway also. So the coastal areas, some of the inland wetlands are also important resting and food feeding sites for several bird species. You all must have heard about the Sambar Lake last year, not last year, in 2019, where several, almost 150,000 birds died because of avian botulism, a pathogen that was a bacterial infection that was there. And these things are all important for the welfare, as to how we can conserve wetlands and protect the water bodies. The other charismatic species include, the tiger, the one-horned rhino, the black-necked crane, the gharials, the fishing cat, the swamp deer, the dancing deer found in Loktak Lake. The Shanghai, the dancing deer that is found over there only. That's the only habitat that you get in the country. And if we manage to destroy it completely, where will this deer go? And then there are certain species of birds which are under the threatened category of IUCN. Like, their habitat is destroyed, and if you do not conserve the habitat, these birds will not find their space to come and feed and all, and we just lose it from the face of the earth also. So if we look at the productivity, estuaries, swamps, marshes, and lakes and streams have maximum productivity as compared to the other ecosystems. And why has the pressure increased on the water bodies? If you go to see the population that is there, the number of population in the growing countries like India and China, in the cities, maybe just like 29 and 42%. Whereas in developed countries, it is like 81% for US. but the population size of our country is much more, where we put more strain on our water resources and thereby impacting our water bodies. A report from the Wetlands Living Planet report says that there is 60% loss of tropical species, 29% rise in temperate species because of climate change and several other anthropogenic activities that are happening, like 35% fall of freshwater species, 25% fall in marine species, and 24% fall in terrestrial species. If one compares another report by the WWF itself, they studied the blue water scarcity for 405 river basins. And if you look at India, India has something like minimum 4 to 5 months to 12 months of water scarcity throughout. This is because of the way we handle our water bodies, the way we use the water resources. Then a recent study shows that what is the stress caused by agriculture on the water consumption. This is like comparing the water that is used in agriculture to the naturally or renewably available water resources. And if one goes to see, it is like about 12.5 to 50% and above. That much strain is what we put on the naturally available water resources that are there. And if one has to see where maximum amount of carbon is stored, it is known that carbon is stored in living biomass, dead biomass, and soil. And if we compare the different ecosystems that are found, wetlands are found to have the maximum amount of carbon stored. And it is known that the more wetter the place, the more colder the place, it is better to store carbon. So if one goes to see, the carbon stored in the soil is 2,500 gigatons, and in wetlands it is maximum as compared to the other ecosystems, because here it is like the water can be there throughout the year, or it could be at least there for 4 months of the year, which is not the case in the other ecosystems. And this all is just at a depth of 1 meter that has been studied. It is not deeper. So at a depth of 1 meter, if this is the amount of carbon that is stored, that much it helps in climate change sequestration. India has several laws and initiatives by which you can protect the wetlands. The oldest one being in 1857, and the most recent one being Wetland Rules of 2017. And since people could not understand what the wetland rules want to say, there was another guidelines that was passed in 2019. India is also signatory to several, say, international policies and say goals and all that, of which even be a part of the wetland sustainable development goals. And all the goals that are there, that is the 17 sustainable development goals, has got water as its ingredient, as its main component, whereby it is there to help the society, help the common man, the community, but somehow we do not take that into consideration, whether it is quality education, whether it is gender equality, whether it is sustainable cities and communities. The emphasis is not there on wetlands. Wetlands is something that is secondary and it is last, and that only is what is important. Wetland is also there as a part of the the biodiversity targets that are there, like the target 3, target 6, and target 8 emphasize on documenting wetlands, conserving wetlands, and providing livelihood to the several communities that live around the wetlands. And most importantly, the National Water Policy recommends an adoption of the basin level approach. When we talk about water bodies, we only talk that there is a water body that is there, individual. We do not look at what is the landscape around it, and we end up, encroaching the water body to such an extent that it becomes like a bottleneck. It is choked, and there is no give and take between the landscape and the water body. The only give and take that happens is release of effluents and fluids, and that the water body can not sustain for a long time, and somehow it is not protected. The need for management gradually happened, since 2010, after the wetland rules came into existence in 2010, and it was conventionally thought that protecting wetlands or management of wetlands is the government responsibility. Even now, it is considered that way, and it is not considered important that the locals protect wetlands in any form. Rapid urbanization and local governance is important in increasing the conservation towards the wetland, and giving importance to people's role is more important, and this can help in conserving biodiversity, the productivity, and various things. The managers can be local, the owners can be there, and there can be ownership towards conserving the wetlands at various with various stakeholders and all. So India's commitments include, like, the Indian Constitution 51 AG says that it is the responsibility of every Indian citizen to protect forest, wetlands, rivers, and all water bodies. And in 82, India was the first signatory, among the first 16 countries to sign the Ramsar Convention in 71. And in 82, we had our first Ramsar site, that is the Chilika and the Bharatpur. And we have the Environment Protection Act, which also talks about wetland conservation. We had the Wetland Conservation Program since 1986. 2001, the Lake Conservation Plan came, and in 2013, both the lake and the wetland conservation plans were merged into one, has plan for conservation of aquatic ecosystems. 2010 and 17, we have these rules as well as the guidelines that came in 2019. The government on its part has been doing, like, the Ministry of Environment and Forest has been doing its maximum in conserving wetlands. Like during 2019, from October to December, we, along with the government, identified some 100 wetlands in 100 days, which can be conserved, which can be highlighted for conservation. The idea was 100 days, 100 wetlands. But in those 100 days, we identified some 140 wetlands, and we classified them based on the health of the ecosystem, whether it is clean, whether it is giving ecosystem services, whether the biodiversity is good enough, whether there is livelihood associated with it, and the people are conserving, and all that aspects together. So we graded them, gave them a health score from A to E, E being the most poor one and A being the best one. In Maharashtra, I had identified some 5 wetlands, and fortunately, we did not have wetlands that scored E, but we did have wetlands that scored C. So Powai being one which had scored C, Rankara and Kolhapur had scored C. So also Dhamapur Lake in Sindhudurg had scored C. So there were these wetlands that were identified and done along with the help of the local community and people. So in the wetland rules, I'll just tell that the confusion as per the definition as to what is not a wetland. If a particular water body is identified only for a particular purpose, something like if it is constructed only for drinking purpose, it is not included in the wetland rules. If it is only for aquaculture, a pit is dug up and there the fish seeds are released, fish, prawn or whatever, and it is only for that aquaculture purpose, it is not a wetland. If it is a man-made, newly created salt pan, where it is only for the production of salt that is created, it is not a age-old, 100-year-old, say salt pan, because the age-old ones were created in a different way. There was more nature and the environmental aspects that were taken into consideration. Those are considered as wetlands, but the recently constructed salt pans are not considered as wetlands. Then the ones where only boating is there, it's only for recreation, or it is only for irrigation, such water bodies are not considered as wetlands. But if a water body serves all these purposes, like it is used for drinking, it is used for fishing, it is used for salt production from one side, it is used for recreation, it is used also for irrigation purpose, multi-purpose water body exists, it is a wetland. So if it is only a specific one, it is not a wetland, otherwise it becomes a wetland. And river channels are excluded, paddy fields are excluded. But there are other, there was one more confusion, like, there is a wetland that covers an area which is designated under Indian Forest Act, or it is under the Wildlife Protection Act, and then there is also the notification of CRZ. but the wetland is covering all the three zones. Here, the wetland rules do come into existence, plus these existing ones, the CRZ, Forest Act, and the Wildlife Protection Act is also applicable over there, and the protection is given to the entire water body, including these three regions. So these are basically there for conservation of wetlands. Now, if one goes to see, nearly 2/3 of the global population would experience water scarcity by 2025. And it is necessary that we restore land, reverse desertification. These are some of the things that are important. And if one goes to see, almost 1 million plants and animals out of the 8 million species are at the risk of extinction. And biodiversity loss is not just an environmental loss. It also impacts our economy, the society, the security, and it is a moral issue. And if we try to restore wetlands, it would create jobs, it would boost health, it would provide livelihoods to the vulnerable. So understanding, what kind of a water body exists, whether it is a wetland, whether it is a deep water ecosystem, whether it is a dynamic or static ecosystem, is important, and what is the health of the ecosystem is important. And for this purpose, whether it is in the cities or whether it is in the rural areas, urban or rural, does not matter. It is important that we conserve these water bodies and protect them. Like when I was working with WWF in Mumbai, we had documented something like 69 water bodies that were existing in 2009. And this was almost half the figure there from what was noted in the Gazetteer for Bombay. The Britishers had noted 129 or 30 wetlands that existed in Mumbai, and coming down to just 69 was a big loss and a destruction. But these small water bodies need to be conserved, and we can all work towards conservation of these water bodies. Yeah, so here I end my this thing, and thank you so much. I think there are some questions in the chat box. Should I take it, or how should I do it? Hello?
Oh, we'll read it out to you, sir.
Yeah.
So the first question is, how can urban people contribute to conservation of wetlands at an individual level, apart from not littering?
Yeah, see, apart from not littering, first thing, yeah, definitely, you don't litter only going towards a wetland. You also start your litter right from your home. So, if you can control what is wet waste, what is dry waste, control at your home level, at your society level, your college level, university level, and, not let maximum things go to the dump yard. Like, there was this picture that I showed in my slideshow just before the thank you slide, which is a dump yard near Gorai. There's so much of garbage waste that has gone over there. A lot of home waste that goes over there, and that ultimately affects the wetland. So if you can reduce your waste, definitely these things will not go to the wetland, because as I said, wetlands are considered as wastelands even now in India. We have an atlas where water bodies are there in the in the atlas as wastelands. So if such things can be controlled at an individual level, people can contribute towards conservation of wetlands. You can talk to people. That is one thing that you can do. I wouldn't say that you should go to the water body and start cleaning up the water body. If you can do it, it's a good thing. But if you cannot do that, you can at least minimum do this at your home level. Talk to people, talk to children. That is an important thing. Yeah, you can tell about the rules, regulations that are there. Yeah.
So the next question is, what can we as individuals do to protect the wetlands?
What can you as individuals do to protect the wetlands? See, in Mumbai, there are several classic cases where people have protected wetlands, like the mangrove ecosystems, or even several ecosystems. The RA colony thing that was protected from getting converted into metro yard. So if you can come together, there are a lot of things, we have this concept that, beautifying a wetland is very good. And what people end up doing is, concretizing things. So as an individual, if you can go to such wetlands, water bodies, and see what is the condition, if you can document the biodiversity of the wetlands around the water bodies, these You can definitely have a list of flora fauna that is there, and when these policymakers decide, these managers, enforcers decide to concretize small water bodies in the name of beautification, in the name of making jogging tracks and all, they should know what they're destroying. They should know the biodiversity that they are destroying. So you as students can use your knowledge in documenting, listing these diversity aspects that are there. Definitely that will help the managers in not concretizing certain things straight away and reducing the water percolation capacity of the wetland, the water holding capacity of the wetland, and letting it stay for a longer time. Yeah, that way you can surely do it as one of the ways. And the other thing, as I said, reduce, reuse, recycle your waste maximum. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The next question is, are there any other environmental laws for wetland protection apart from the ones you stated today?
For India, no. These are the ones that we have, and they are good enough. Right from 1870s that we have, 1857 that we have not implemented them. We are not implementing the wetland rules, the most recent one. So if the government has tried, I said that we had this 100 days 100 wetlands program where we tried to prioritize wetlands and try to conserve them. After that, we started with the 1,000 wetland scheme, where we are trying to identify some 1,000 wetlands across the country which can be conserved. But unfortunately, we have reached just a number of something like 700 wetlands. 300 are still to be listed. Several reasons, people say that this particular water body is not a wetland. Why? Because they want to have some activity around the wetland, like they would like to encroach, they would like to have some wood bank and all that stuff. That all comes in, and the destruction just goes on. So even at the ministry level, we have not been able to reach up to the 1,000 mark, despite, we can thank the COVID that we could not go to the ground level for the past 2 years. But that cannot be used as an excuse just for not having done certain things. But we have not been able to reach that 1,000 mark, that we should have done till now. Several reasons, but sure, we don't need more environmental laws. We should just use the ones which we already have. They are good enough, which you can, protect the wetlands that we have. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The
Welcome.
next question is, are there any international organizations that collaborate with Ramsar Convention?
See, Ramsar, there's this IUCN, that has a lot of activities that they do. This year, the World Wetlands Day was celebrated for the first time as a UN day. Otherwise, since 1995, the World Wetlands Day has been celebrated on 2nd of February. Has just a Ramsar Day, and it did not get that collaborative thing. This was the first year that that collaboration of having that day recognized by the IUCN was there, and 2022 was the first year to celebrate the Wetland Day as a IUCN Day. Then there are several other collaborations that happen, internationally. So that depends on for what purpose it is happening. Like Wetlands International is another international organization that collaborates with the Ramsar Convention. There are several other such organizations, like the Bird Life and all, that collaborate and work with the Ramsar Convention. But when it comes to protecting a wetland, you need not have international collaborations or organization. There needs to be an individual political will, so that these things can get conserved and protected. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The next question is, could you explain the process of mummification in wetlands?
Yeah. See, wetlands, basically, these are the places where the leaves and all fall, and it being a closed ecosystem, the water wouldn't flow out. So there's a lot of plant litter, soil, and all that gets accumulated, and there's a lot of peat. So it is highly acidic also, and it is rich in tannin. So when these human bodies were killed and sacrificed and put in these ecosystems, what would happen is the tannin-rich substance chemicals would just penetrate into the cells of these bodies and naturally mummify them. So it was like the hair would remain good, the skin would remain good, but somehow it would affect the bones. So the calcification would not remain that much, but that would get soft. But then otherwise the entire process would just naturally get mummified and remain over there. So it was not like, somebody, not like the Egyptian mummies where, some balm, embalming and all was done. So, nothing like that. It was like the nature, because of the peat, because of the chemical composition of the soil and the organic matter that was there, that helped in the mummification of the bodies over there. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The next question is there any possibility to construct a wetlands on a small scale?
Yeah, like there are several such wetlands that are being constructed on a small scale for either aquaculture purpose or recreational purpose. But then, constructing man-made wetlands usually do not qualify as wetlands, because it depends on which place you are trying to create a wetland. Whether it is a shallow ecosystem, what is the contour of the landscape, how does the water come, or is it that it is only during rainfall that you are obstructing a place and creating this thing. So constructing such wetlands is there, it's common around, and it is possible. You can say small rivers and all during the Peshwa time were dammed, so that the waters would the water would just get stopped, and not completely, to a certain extent it would increase the ground water level and serve the community that is living around over there. So such small constructed wetlands also existed in our ancient time, and even now we have these aquaculture ponds and all that are there. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, how many countries are a part of the Ramsar Convention?
There are many. I forget the number, but if you go onto the Ramsar website, I'm sorry, there are over 100 countries that are there, and several hectares of land is conserved under the Ramsar Convention. So the exact country number, I have not kept it ready, so really sorry. But if you go onto the Ramsar website, you will get that figure right away. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, can you please explain what is wetland loss and wetland degradation?
Okay, see, if a wetland is reclaimed by putting a lot of rubble, so it wouldn't remain over there. The water would not, you will not get to see water in that particular place. Like, see, Mumbai was a group of 7 islands. It had a lot of streams and all that were there in between. There were some river channels that were passing through, but we cut a couple of mountains, and we made the whole island of Mumbai as a single landmass. So there were small water bodies that were there that has lost totally. So there is no wetland in those 7 that were interconnecting the 7 islands, because it's only one island. Or more recent one, if you know Uran. Uran was a place where there was this coastal wetland where several thousands of migratory birds would come, and this was way before the Thane Creek was called as the Flamingo Sanctuary. Say in it was in 2008, 7-8. Uran was still a wetland with lot of migratory birds over there, but unfortunately there was this SEZ that came in, Special Economic Zone, and Reliance Company was the one which was developing that. What they managed to do was cut good amount of mountains. The 2 mountains were cut to just fill up the Uran wetland over there, and that wetland was lost totally. So it is like something that is not there anymore to see, and there's just stones and garbage and mud and all piled up to make a landmass so that there can be human construction and civilization and development that can be grown over there, developed over there. That is something that is the wetland loss. Whereas wetland degradation is something like you go to Powai Lake. The Powai Lake was a huge lake. Some 50 years ago, it was at the foothills of the Western Ghats, just besides IIT Powai. good amount of landmass of water existed over there. But over a period of time, what is happening is we have increased the highway. We have tried to encroach from the other side. There is now cycling track and all coming up. So, it is slowly, enclosing it. It is becoming smaller and smaller. And as this happens, what happens is, the edges, we are just piling up with lot of rubble and all that. And the aquatic vegetation that existed is just going off. So, this is like gradual loss of this biodiversity and ecosystem and habitat that just goes off. And this is something that is degradation. So loss is something that is totally lost, and degradation is something that the quality of the water is also getting less, or it is not pure enough. I can even give you the example of Mithi River, or the this thing Mahim Creek, that has degraded because of human encroachment from the side, release of sewage, garbage, and all that effluents and all that have deteriorated the quality of the water over there. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The
Yeah.
next question is, does the Mumbai Coastal Road project have some effect on wetland conservation?
You should tell me this. Does the Coastal Road project have some effect on wetland conservation? You tell me. Yes or no?
There must surely be some.
Yeah, it does have. It does have a major impact on conservation. Did you know that Mumbai has corals? The Mumbai landscape, the edges of Mumbai, even Sophia College, if you just go down to Marine Drive and all, even now that place does have corals. So just imagine, with this coastal road coming up, what would be the situation? Now, corals usually grow where, there's less turbidity and all. So with this digging, dredging and all happening, the water is going to be more turbid, and definitely it will clog into all these corals that are there. So it is impacting the diversity and the wetland conservation. So it is like the coastal area, the coastal wetlands are getting impacted. So, but in the name of development and all that, sometimes people just sacrifice something that is mute. So, here the coastal ecosystem is mute. It cannot talk for itself. And the people who do not understand what is a wetland. So, it will help us, like, we will be able to drive our cars at a very good speed. So, that is what we need, and we will support it. So that is what is happening. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next
Yeah.
question is, how do fishermen benefit from the wetlands?
They would definitely get their livelihood. Yeah, see, when I was doing my PhD on Thane Creek, this was way back in the 2000, 1998, 2000, probably much before you were born also. So, that time I used to take the help of local fishermen and go in Thane Creek. And that time, who would come with me were, school boys, the boys who were in 7th standard, 8th standard, 9th standard. They would come with me the boat, they would row the boat, take me to the mud flats. I would do my research and come. And one day I asked them, why is it that you don't go to school, and why is it that your father or your uncle is not coming with me? They said, we have enough fish over here. So why should we go and waste our time in studying when we know that we can earn our livelihood over here? And then later on, after a couple of years, I went back again, and then they were like, we should have gone to study. There's no fish remaining over here. The reason being the pollution has increased. There is depletion. So, if a wetland is kept in a good condition, the fishermen benefit from the wetlands. There is job for them readily available over there, which otherwise, what we end up doing them is, we keep them as our maids in the house. The women has maids in the house who otherwise would have been selling fishes out in the fish market. The men has watchmen in our building and malls, who would otherwise work the masters for themselves. This is how this is one of their losses that they have. Otherwise, it was like a benefit for them. A good wetland always benefits the livelihood of the locals. That much inflation also does not happen. That much say expenses are also cut down. Things don't go much expensive. But now with depleting things, it definitely affects the fishermen of their livelihood. And the benefits are there if it is a good ecosystem. What happens? Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, sir. What
Yeah.
happens when the wetlands disappear?
I just answered that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all for your insightful questions that have definitely added nuance to our talks today. And thank you to Dr. Golden for answering all of them so patiently. I now request Dr.
Welcome.
Sri Nair to say a few words of this talk.
I think Dr. Roshan is there and she has just raised the hand. Hello. Hello. I just saw Dr. Roshan's hand raised.
Roshan ma'am, would you like to speak something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, hello to you, Golden.
Hi.
It's nice to see you in Sophia after so many years, virtually though.
Virtually,
I hope you're doing good.
I'm
Good
good.
work
Thank you
of
so
so
much.
many years of yours. It was wonderful to hear. I just wanted to know if there have been this kind of flaunting of these regulations, and have there been any landmark judgments which remains as an example for the others who are, doing this kind of degradation to the wetland? Have there been any cases like that?
Yeah. In recent times, there have been some, recent time in a sense, just a couple of 4 to 5 months time, there have been very good judgments. One being the Panje wetlands, very close to Uran, which has been declared as a wetland by the NGT and all. So that is one very good example. The other one being at Dhamapur in Sindhudurg, where there were, construction activities that were being done by PWD and other revenue departments and all, and destroying the wetland. So the local community came together and they filed a PIL. They, fought with the other stakeholders, so-called, people who owned a place, and they won the case. And now that wetland is being protected completely. So such cases are there. Several of them are there. Yeah. So the wetland rules has helped them, because they could use this, as a guideline, has a set format, where you have to follow these rules, and government is there to support you for such things, like, but at the times, even things don't happen from the government side, like there are state wetland authority does not act as much proactively as it should. But yeah, it is being done.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you covered this because I joined your lecture a little late. So sorry if I have asked you the same thing again.
No, you did not ask. I
Okay,
think I did not cover this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Quadros, for such a insightful lecture. So this year, that is 2022, the theme for National Science Day was Integrated Approach in Science and Technology for Sustainable Future. So the question of sustainable future came, we thought of Mumbai, then we discovered that the wetlands are of paramount importance, because if there are no wetlands, the existence of city of Mumbai is a big question mark. So thank you, Dr. Quadros, for accepting our invitation and giving such a succinct talk on wetland. The definition of wetland, the laws about wetland, and and finally the take-home message that the existence of wetland, of course, lies in each one of us. The responsibility lies in each one of us, wherein which we have to learn how to take care. Whereas Sir said, the segregation of waste itself is a first step towards maintaining this wetlands. And it's not that beautification of a wetland is going to give an answer. It's better not to meddle with the wetlands. Thank you so much. And this is just the first part of our event. Of course, today Science Day is being celebrated in Sophia's in truly hybrid way. We have this online event happening here in Zoom, as well as there are offline events happening in the campus for school students. So the second part of this event is Science Fest, where the students will be exhibiting their work in the scientific work in form of posters, as well as some creative ideas in the form of cartoons. So Dr. Quadros, it's up to you whether you want to stay over here and watch the work of the students, or you're willing, if you're willing, please stay. Otherwise, it's up to you.
Thank you so much. I have some other meeting to attend today, so it won't be possible. But yeah, it has been a good experience talking to your students and with the number of questions. It was really good. And yeah, like Dr. Roshan said, it's always a homecoming for me to Sophia. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, and if it is there, the link is there on YouTube. I will surely catch up later. It's always a learning thing at Sophia's. Yeah.
I sent you the link, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much, Sri Ma'am and Dr. Golden. I'd like to now take you all through the second part of today's event, Science Fest. I now request our esteemed speaker, Dr. Meeta Saxena, to brief us about the same.
Thank you, Anusuya. Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone once again. Sophia College celebrates Science Day every year on the occasion of National Science Day. This year, we have gathered for the 12th Fist Wider Than the Sky. In this, there are two activities, e-poster presentation and cartoon making. Due to pandemic situation, we are having an online poster presentation where each student will present their research work in the form of PowerPoint slides with audio recording. We have received 22 posters this year from FYBSc to MSc second year students. Students have done survey-based projects on various topics, from health-related issues like blood pressure, diabetes, to environmental issues like climate change, waste management, plastics, air pollution, and social issues like smoking addiction, and even impact of the current pandemic on the education system and physical fitness. MSc students have focused on Drosophila, Parkinson's diseases, and bioinformatic based approaches. This year, we are proud that our FY students have done survey-based research and are presenting their posters. The second activity is the cartoon presentation, where students are presenting inspiring stories of scientists and scientific concepts in the form of cartoon and digital drawing. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for a succinct explanation. I now call upon Chelsea to introduce and acquaint the audience to Dr. Lakshmi Girish.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chelsea, and today this task of introducing a second guest of honor and an expert is a great privilege. I feel elated to introduce Dr. Lakshmi Girish. She is an assistant professor in CHM College, Ulhasnagar. Ma'am has been a gold medalist in her bachelor's and master's program. She has published many papers in national and international journals. Not only is she an excellent teacher, but also a great author who has written some book chapters. Ma'am also is a PhD guide with 4 students working under her. She is here today to share her expertise in this enormous field. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Lakshmi Girish. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Elisa.
Saloni, okay, we are starting, right? Okay, thank you.
Greetings from the FIBSE students of Sophia College. On the auspicious occasion of Science Day, we have created a poster called Madhumeha. Now, what is Madhumeha, you may ask? Madhumeha in Ayurveda stands for diabetes. Sushruta, an ancient Indian healer and physician, identified it as Madhumeha. Here, Madhu means honey. Combined with the word Meha, the term means sweet urine. Our study aims to explore the trends and correlation observed between the diagnosis of diabetes and BMI, while considering factors such as age and sex through self-reported data. BMI stands for Body Mass Index. It is a ratio of tissue mass in kg to the square of the height in meters of an individual. The data required for the study was collected from 149 respondents, of which 78 were female, 70 were male, and 1 identifying as others. According to our findings, patients with a higher BMI are more likely to develop diabetes. From the poster, we can conclude that not all obese and overweight people have diabetes just by looking at the results of a non-diabetic patient. The 60 plus population reported the second highest percentage of individuals with a normal BMI at 63.6%, followed by below 18 at 59.4%. BMI values gradually increased over the age of 18 and showed a U-shaped trend till 60 years of age. The under 18 age group reported 0 cases of diabetes. Thus, the general trend shows that number of cases of diabetes increases with age and is highest in the midlife stages. Individuals in their middle years are especially at risk of type 2 diabetes, whose onset is largely determined by age, weight, and blood pressure. Losing extra weight, regular exercise, limiting sugar to 6 teaspoons a day, etc. are some easy prevention measures to keep late onset diabetes away. Thank you.
The topic of our project is blood pressure. Blood pressure is the pressure of circulating blood against the walls of blood vessels. Most of this pressure results from the heart pumping blood through the circulatory system. For this, we did a survey of around 70 people, out of which 34 were male and 36 were female, by asking them about their age, weight, gender, and whether they are suffering from blood pressure or not. After the survey of around 70 people was done, we found that 79.1% of female and 20.9% of male were diagnosed with blood pressure. From this, we came to our conclusion that the percentage of women suffering from blood pressure was higher than the percentage of men, and the percentage of age group 30 to 40 was highest, and the percentage of age group below 18 was lowest. People with weight around 51 to 60 kg were found with the highest with the greatest percentage suffering from blood pressure, while the people with weight around 90 to 100 kg were found with the lowest percentage suffering from blood pressure.